Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
I'm Megan.
And welcome to the podcast where we we shake weird shit.
We shaking the gree-gree.
Ah, we are. I have them. This is like the podcast where the facts aren't made up and the penises come after.
Oh.
Or before. They come before the game.
Where both the facts and the penises are real.
Yes.
Well, at least the raccoon ones.
The raccoon ones are real. The crystal ones, you know what? They come from Mother Nature herself.
Those are Mother Nature's
penises.
Phalluses.
They are. They are. You would have thought they'd be bigger.
I mean, yes. They're still impressive, though.
They are. They are. Hey, everybody. Welcome again to Crime Curious. Sorry that we are weird. Yeah. Don't turn us off. We promise that we're fairly decent at this by now on our third year. Okay. I have for you, it's been a while since we've really done old timey. I know if you're a Patreon, we give you so many bonus episodes a month that they get a good mix of like old timey and new timey and all those sorts of things. But I feel like for our general audience, we have not done an old timey in a while. And this one to me has, my goodness, it's drama.
Oh, I love
it's old timey.
Like 1800s or early 1900s?
It's early 1900s, 1929.
Okay.
But
the Roaring 20s, the end of the Roaring 20s.
I think you're going to like it because I didn't know about this case, but it has to do with like professors from Ohio State University.
You can't trust a Buckeye.
Exactly my thoughts. The Ohio State, yes.
The reason we have a true crime podcast today.
Yes,
Thanks, OHIO.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the only thing that people, you and I, being a U of M and MSU fan, can agree on.
Absolutely.
Oh, how I hate Ohio State.
Yep, it's so true. If you are a football fan, you know what we're talking about. And if you are from Ohio and you're a Buckeye, you understand we're Wolverine and Sparty over here.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and
no offense.
We still love you. Just go change your sweatshirt.
Yeah. Just don't come at us with that gray and red. All right.
Also, your mascot looks like a poop.
Oh my God, it does look like a little tiny turd.
He does.
Yes, like a little rabbit plop.
And yes, I've seen a Buckeye. We grow them here too. Mm-hmm. They don't look like that.
No, but yeah. Okay. Anyhow, on to this tragedy, but it also has like some real scandal.
Okay.
Scandal. Yes. And we can, not be as sensitive about it because all of the people.
That's why I like old timies.
Me too. We don't have to be as PC. Still a tragedy. Absolutely. But anywho, enough talking. Let's get on with this. We're going to start this case at the discovery of the tragedy and work it through the investigation lens, as you know I like to do from time to time.
I love it.
I'm going to take you to June 13th, 1929, near the Ohio State University. There were two college students. They were just arriving at the shooting range, the rifle range, actually, that's not far from campus. It was a popular area, not only for the college shooters that are on like the team, the trap team, but also the local like police. They would use that range as well.
Great. So the local cops using that as a shooting range.
Yep. And actually this was like, for the time, it was a really nice range. And so it drew in some of the best shooters in the country. If they, could go there, they wanted to, like, of the time, they would find like the best. It's kind of like if you're a really avid golfer and you go travel to do the different courses.
Sure.
Well, this was a hot spot. It was such a nice rifle range that it was a nice spot for a lot of top shooters to come and practice. So these 2 college students, they were the first to arrive at the range that day, and the shooting field was overgrown. So the grass was about knee high or so. And so the boys had to walk out, place their targets, and then go back and, start shooting. So as they're walking to place their targets, one of them noticed that there was something in the distance. It almost seemed like someone was sleeping in the tall grass.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. So this kid is like, hey, you see that over there? Let's go wake them up. That's weird.
Please be napping.
I don't think it even crossed these boys' mind that it could be anybody but someone sleeping in the grass. And so, of course, as they approach what they thought was a sleeping human, they discover is tragically a woman. Her head had been beaten and bloodied.
Oh, she wasn't shot?
As they got closer and they realized that she's dead, they did not take a close enough look to really tell how the
one wouldn't.
No.
Because I would quickly, once you know that you can't do any life-saving measures, she's obviously beaten to death, I go get the police.
And they did. That's exactly what they did. They got the police.
Yeah.
So one of the first detectives on the scene was Chief W.G. Schallenbarger.
Cool name.
Yes. My autocorrect did not love that name. It tried to change it to various things, but it is Schallenbarger or Schallenberger if you want to do a hard G-E-R.
Okay.
However.
I like a soft G.
Yeah, me too.
Everything else hard, but give me the
soft G.
Right. Oh my God, I don't even know what to say anymore.
So, they could, the detective can kind of see, remember, it's 1929, so word is spreading fast. By the time the detective gets there, there are other people crowded around.
Yeah.
And they're like, back up, all right? He could clearly see where the boys had originally walked. It's, it's in the morning, so where they had walked in the grass and then walked away, all right? But the thing is, there were no other tracks around. So the detective is thinking, with no other tracks besides the 2 tracks from the boys, how long has she really been lying here? Because the grass had already had time to kind of bring itself back up.
Yes.
Right?
And for those of you who aren't rural people and aren't used to that, in the morning when grass is kind of damp, dewy, and wet,
especially
I will have
tall grass.
Exactly. Yep. It bends down as you walk through, but throughout the day, as it dries, it literally starts to stand back up again.
It becomes erect.
It becomes erect within 12 hours.
Yep.
Like the grass had a blue pill.
Yes, within 12 hours.
Nature's Viagra. Dried it right out.
It's a long time to wait for an erection. Sometime between now and 12 hours.
I've waited for one for longer.
So that was kind of detective's first clue is that, all right, she wasn't placed here this morning. No. She wasn't placed here when the grass was wet.
Nope.
Obviously, because there were only those tracks. So Detective Schallenberger and the coroner counted on her body. They did take her body to actually the coroner's, it was described as being the coroner's office. I really hope he had a lab, but it's 1929. I don't know, guys.
Sure.
But they knew she had multiple blows to the head. They were rounded, so they're thinking it was probably from a hammer. They actually tried to pinpoint it down to even like a ball peen hammer because it was so round. Her throat and her body had several deep slashes as well. So they're searching for her personal belongings to try to ID her, of course, and they did find a set of keys in her pocket, but nothing else to help identify her. In just hours, it didn't take them long to clean up the scene because there's not a whole lot there. They didn't find anything on the rifle range. There was no hammer. There was no knife. Nothing was left at the scene besides her body. So what ends up happening, how we figure out who this young woman is 2 women named Alice and Beatrice Booston. They were sisters. They attended Ohio State University. And they went to the police because they were very worried that their roommate had not returned from the night before from going on a date. So they go to they go to the police. They tell the authorities about the situation. They describe the missing woman to the police. And they're like, that actually matches the description of the woman found on the rifle range this morning. And unfortunately, because there's really no other way, they did have to take Alice and Beatrice Booston to the morgue to identify the woman found on the rifle range as their roommate. And it was. They
had to ID her.
They did. They had to ID her. And they identified her as Theora Hix. And she was, in fact, their missing roommate.
Okay.
So Miss Theora. So the police start here. Now they're questioning the two girls. What do you know of Miss Hix? What do you know about what she did the day before? That kind of thing. They said that she had actually went to the local hospital to see if she could get a part-time job because she was a medical student and she was interested in starting to work at the hospital.
Oh.
And she also, go ahead.
Oh, nothing.
Oh,
I was just,
I gasped. You gasped in, and so I thought that was you ready to say something.
I'm just thinking. I'm going to internalize for a little bit.
All right. She also told them that she had a date that night. Okay. And they were surprised because, to their knowledge, Miss Hix didn't date anyone. All right. So
that doesn't mean she can't.
Correct. But this was just the first time that she had been like, hey, I'm going to go on a date tonight. And they're like, well, she's really focused on school, on her medical career, So, and they admitted that they really don't know much about her private life. Once in a while, they had seen her around campus with an older man in a small car. They didn't know if the two were in a relationship or not. They thought that the person might be a faculty member.
Yeah, she's banging a professor.
Well, but they had also seen her with another man that was closer to her age. He was a young student, might have even been a young staff member.
Okay.
Just much closer to her age, but they just weren't sure who the man was, so they couldn't say for sure if it was a student or maybe just a young staffer, right? So besides that, she kept to herself. She didn't offer a whole lot of information to anyone. They knew that her family was in Florida. That's where she's from. That's where her parents lived. They're in Ohio, So that's about it. So the detective is like, okay, thanks. We'll start here. They contact Ohio State University, who gives them the contact information for her parents, and they work on alerting her parents, and her parents do start driving from Florida to Ohio. It's 1929. It takes a long time today.
It does. I just drove to Miami from Michigan. It's a long drive.
Me too. Exactly. It is 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay. We made it to the tip of Florida in 17 hours.
Yep.
And then still had 4 hours the next day
to get
to our port. So it is 2 days really. Now, and I feel bad for her parents, guys, because, it's 1929. Their daughter left for school in Ohio. They haven't seen her.
Nope.
Since she left for school. Transportation wasn't easy like it is today. It's train rides, days worth of train rides at this point. Yes, they obviously have vehicles too, but it's just not.
They're just not driving those in the early 1900s cross country on trips either.
No. So at this point, Detective Schellenberger is like, all right, I've got to try to follow her movements throughout the day. We know that she went to the hospital. Let's go to the hospital and see if, what they have to offer up there. So he goes to the hospital and he finds out that she did get to the hospital that day, and they actually hired her on the spot. They were excited to start training her on operating a switch phone. And they had actually even started training her. And then later in the day, she said that she had to go because she had to go on a date, but she did not provide any names to anyone. So what is kind of striking to the detective at this point in time is that no one seems to know the name
of the
person that she has now told several people she's meeting up with this night, right?
Well, she's kind of being secretive about it. Like she's letting everybody know she has a date, but she's not offering that either, which is, I think, maybe for a young lady atypical.
I agree.
Like if you told your roommates, I'm not going on a date tonight, you just leave it like that. I don't think that would be me. And I was a serious studier. Like I didn't
have something to hide.
Unless you had something to hide. Exactly. Like you didn't want them to know who the person was, but you're going to cover it a little bit with, I'm going out.
I'm just going. Yeah, you won't see me because I'm going out on a date. Yep. Now, the news of her murder obviously spreads around campus.
And going to be scary.
Yes, exactly. This is hot news. So immediately the police start receiving a lot of tips. Okay.
About who she's been seen with?
Yes. And the consistent one that came in is that she was often seen in the company of a teacher at the school, Mr. Professor James Snook, Snook.
Okay.
A lot of people had reported that they had seen Theora in his car just a day or two ago. So this is surprising because James Snook was not just a teacher at the school. He was also somewhat of a local celebrity because he held the world's record for pistol shooting and was also a gold medalist at the 1920 Summer Olympic Games for the 50-meter team pistol shooting.
Oh, he is good with his weapon.
He is, and he's familiar with a rifle range.
He is.
Yes. He taught veterinary medicine at Ohio State University and had done so for some time. So he had made a name for himself as more of a tenure member of the faculty, well respected. So the detectives are like, interesting. Let's call and see where Mr. Professor Snook was. Now, his assistant answers the phone, says, I think he's actually at the shooting range where he spends a majority of his time. So they went to check, and indeed, they found Professor Snook there shooting a rifle, and they asked him to come in for some questioning. The detectives wanted to know what Professor Snook knew, of Theora Hix, and they just are trying to see what they can see. Pull at some thread here,
this
right?
This is how we start. First, does he even deny he knows her?
Well, they started with, what were your movements the night before? So the professor told them that he and Theora Hix.
Okay, he admitted that.
He did. Were professional friends. Nothing else.
Okay.
She was in his car because he was putting together a book and he needed her help with typing. She was transcribing. She was doing the typing. Men couldn't be bothered with such tasks back in 1929.
No, we were the only ones good with our fingers back then.
Yes, we have the nimble fingers. So they had been discussing payment for this service.
Oh,
okay.
That sounds nefarious.
For typing. And one thing that Detective Schallenberger noticed right away is that Professor Snook's hand was bandaged. Yeah, so they asked him about this, and he was like, yeah, I hurt my hand while I was working on my car. Like, my goodness.
You're a jack of all trades.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You're a gold medalist in shooting. You're a professor of veterinary medicine and a mechanic.
Yeah.
It is rare to find so many endearing qualities about a man.
He is the whole package.
Mm-hmm. So he told the police that on the night of, when Theora likely died, the night in question, he had stayed late at his office. He didn't leave till 7 or 8, not sure which. And then he drove to the country club to get some shooting glasses, which, if you don't know, literally were like glasses that you would shoot at. Okay,
no kidding.
Shooting glasses. Yeah,
okay.
We didn't worry about Mother Earth back then.
We just shot glass up into nature.
Sure did.
It's probably better.
All over the ground.
Glass is better for nature than plastic.
Yeah. Yes. But the clay targets we use now are much better.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And then he said, excuse me, because I had to take a drink, and I'm probably going to forget to edit that out later.
I don't care. It was coffee, by the way.
It is coffee. And then he purchased a newspaper on the way home. He met his wife at home around 9:30 p.m.
Oh, there's a wife.
There's a wife.
Yeah.
Professor Snook believed that the school's night watchman could confirm with the police that he was indeed in the office and that others from his stops would do the same to verify his movements. So the officers are like, we will be verifying that information. Thank you. I don't know if that's what Detective Schellenberger's voice sounded like, but in my head it does. Yes. So as they're going about their exploration of trying to verify his whereabouts, Detective Schellenberger receives an intriguing phone call from the coroner's office before they could interview to verify Mr. Snook or Professor Snook's alibi.
They found a gunshot.
No, a man had just walked into the coroner's office, asked to view the body of Theora Hix. The man was upset about her death and stated that he knew her well. His name was Marion Myers, and he fit the description of the person who was a little closer to her age. The other guy that people said they had seen her with recently. So the detectives are like, you know what murderers do sometimes? Sometimes they insert themselves in an investigation.
So now we have 2 suspects.
Yes, because this man insisted on seeing her body. And so the detectives sent officers to find Mr. Myers, and they discovered that he was a state employee. He worked for the State Department of Agriculture and conducted research at Ohio State University. And so they figure out that this is actually how this Marion Myers and Theora Hix found one another.
Okay.
Because he was doing research
He's
at the
there
university.
Researching and
Yep. So Detective Schellenberger went back to Professor Snook's office, talked to his staff as much as they could, and they were like, we actually have no idea if he stayed that late in the office because we didn't stay that late in the office. Can we confirm that he was still here when we left? Yes, but we leave at 5.
Right.
So I have no idea if he stayed till 7 or 8. And so they did say, though, that the next day, so the morning that Theora's body was found, the professor did come in and ask his staff to take care of and clean his car, which wasn't unusual for him to come in and say, hey, staff, my university staff, go and clean my car. But it was weird for them to have been asked to do it first thing in the morning and have it be an all day, like, this is what your job is today. You are to clean every detail of my car.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So,
and what did they find when they were cleaning his car?
Well, what the police could find is that the car had been extensively cleaned.
Okay. So you're not going to find any prints or hair.
We'll get back to that. But the staff didn't say that they found,
blood.
Anything big. It was just like this big hurried thing of, you must go and clean my car, which was odd to them. So the professor's car had been left at the shooting range because that's where the detectives had met up with him. Remember, they found him at the shooting range.
Oh, so when they took him for questioning,
they drove him. Yep. So, they went back to the station to pick up the keys for the car, and then they obtained a search warrant at that point in time, not only for Professor Snook's vehicle, but also for Marion Myers' vehicle as well.
Oh, for his. Okay.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, other officers located Marion Myers, and they found him at a fraternity house on campus, as a matter of fact. And they were like, we're not just going to question you, Megan. They arrested him on suspicion. Now, they have not arrested the professor.
Okay.
At this point in time. But Mr. Myers, they immediately arrest and bring him into the station for questioning.
They used to do all kinds of interesting stuff, but yes. I do find that a little suspicious.
I don't love that.
Well, I don't, because I don't think there's enough to do that. Reasonable suspicion, you can start an investigation, but you're not going to make an arrest on reasonable suspicion. You're going to make an arrest on probable cause. You
haven't even asked this guy anything. You've got witnesses that say, well, first of all, we have him going in and asking to view Theora's body.
Which is maybe weird to them or could lead up to there being a clue later, but there's also a justifiable reason for it. Mm-hmm. In my opinion. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to say he had a thing for her. He wanted to see if it was really her.
Right.
He heard that she was murdered and didn't believe it. Correct. Lots of things.
Exactly. So when he he's pleading with the officers the entire time that he has nothing to do with the murder. He said, I will cooperate, but I had nothing to do with it. And the officers are like, well, if you had nothing to do with it, then you don't have anything to worry about. And then he's like, yeah, but you're arresting me.
I'm a little worried.
Right. So when he gets to the station, Detective Schellenberger interviews him, asks about his relationship with Theora. He said, yeah, I have been close friends with her for 2 years. But then since then, our relationship has cooled. So in other words, we used to bang, but now we no longer bang.
Yeah.
That's what I read into that.
She got eyes for someone else.
He said, I was in Columbus Thursday night, and I had returned to the Bono area, when a fraternity brother called me earlier today and told me about Theora's death.
Okay.
And he thought, because it was his fraternity brother that called him, he thought that he was being pranked.
Yeah.
So he phoned. I
can see that.
Yes. He phoned the police to see if it was true. And they told him that he just needed to come return.
Right.
Okay.
We're not going to tell you anything.
Right.
Which is normal.
Yep.
Open, active investigation.
Yep. So now we have a search warrant for both of the cars. And they started with Dr. Snook's car. When they arrived at the shooting range, they were disappointed because the vehicle absolutely had been cleaned very well. It was evident that the exterior and interior of the car had been detailed. So, but still on their search, they looked for areas that, they were kind of hoping that a general office person wouldn't think to clean. And they did find something interesting. So they looked under the flooring, in the creases, things like that. They opened the passenger door, and one of the detectives noticed what looked to be a drop of blood on the door jamb. So he collected the sample, and it would be taken to the police chemist to see what it was. So in 1929, we don't have DNA, but what we do have is we can come up with the blood type. And so if the blood type in the door jamb matched that of Theora, then in the eyes of the law, that's a match, okay, for the time. Now, this is going to take several days, but at least they have like a lead. Now, I will tell you that Marion Meyer's car had not been recently cleaned. It was clearly used. It looked just like any other of our cars probably right now, where you can
Mine's
tell.
pretty bad.
Yeah, where you can tell that
all the
someone's
DNA is
lived
there.
in it.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. It had nothing had been tried to be cleaned up. All right. Even more interesting. So, and nothing was found in Marion Meyer's vehicle. But as they go back to Dr. Snook's vehicle, they find in the trunk a ball-peen hammer.
Uh-oh. Mm-hmm. It's going to match the head wounds.
They also found stained gloves, which were obviously taken to the police chemist as well to see if it was the same blood match type.
As good as they could have done back in the 20s.
Correct. At this point in time, Detective Schellenberger now gets a warrant to search Professor Snook's home. Now, this is pretty fast and good investigation.
It is. It's moving along expeditiously.
It really is. Beautiful word. That turned me on a little bit. Expeditiously.
I have a thesaurus.
So they actually decided to, at this point in time, hold Dr. Snooks on suspicion as well.
Good idea.
But as is normal, if they don't charge one of them within 48 hours, they have to let them go.
They must.
Okay. So that is why they're moving so quickly to try to get this warrant at this time for Professor Snook's home. And they work on, after they get that, the scope of the search would be for articles of clothing or articles that appeared to have blood on them. And when they arrive, Mrs. Snook was actually home, and she let the detectives in with no protest because she hoped that the lack of evidence would be able to set her husband free. He can come home from his holding cell because she knows I'm his alibi, right?
Are you though?
She's like, I know he got home at 9:30 p.m. There was nothing amiss. There is nothing to find in my house.
At 7 or 8. Even if he did leave at 7 or 8 and not earlier than that, honey, love, There's still an hour and a half.
Honey, love.
Yeah. Hour and a half here, too.
Well, and in the home, they discover a piece of dry cleaning that was just picked up from the cleaners. And it was one of the jackets of the professors. All right. It had a stained sleeve that most certainly could have been blood. The slip showed that it was dropped off the day after the murder. Okay.
It's not looking good for you, Professor.
No. And then it started to look like there wasn't going to be anything else found until they looked into the home's furnace, like log wood furnace.
Yeah.
Okay. Inside the furnace, much to Mrs. Snook's dismay, was a shirt with stains on it and a woman's vanity case. Mrs. Snook had no idea how those items got into her furnace.
Yeah, your husband wasn't going to have those cleaned. He needed to burn those.
Yes. And it turns out he's not good. He might be a mechanic. He might be a hell of a shooter, a gold medalist, and a professor of veterinary medicine, but he is no caveman because he can't burn shit.
That's awesome.
So now they're like,
I'm too smart to be able to light a fire.
I can't fire?
No.
What's
I mean,
that?
I actually identify with that. I'm terrible at lighting a campfire. If you don't give me lighter fluid, it's probably not going to light.
We're freezing.
Right. We're going to freeze to death.
Oh, so I found this interesting, though. Even after all of this, they're like, we still haven't ruled Marion Myers out.
Really?
Well, that's what I thought. I was like, but are you sure that you haven't?
Is he a co-conspirator?
No.
Okay.
No.
Hey, weirder things have happened.
So, well, true.
I mean, was there a love triangle here?
This is Crime Curious. I mean, I've taken you on a lot of roller
You have
coasters.
taken me on some rides.
For sure. No, he's not a co-conspirator. But at this point in time, what's pissing me off is that they are handling Professor Snooks gingerly, and they're handling Marion like he's a criminal.
Yeah.
And it's pissing me off.
They threw him like a rock in a bag, man.
Yeah.
They have no evidence. None. Other than he showed up at the funeral home.
Right.
That's
he
it.
just wanted to verify that his friend really was dead.
And that's
it. That's all they have on him.
And he's being held.
But it's 1929, and they're thinking, Professor Snooks has got so much going for him. He has a small child. He has a wife. He has a wonderful job at the university. A gold medal.
Those are all the reasons why you commit a murder.
Yeah, right. Why people think that you can't possibly be.
What reason does the young frat boy have to do any of this?
For sure.
Other than a crime of passion, jealousy. I'll throw that out.
So this whole time, as they're mistreating Marion Myers, he's like, listen, I did not know about her death until my friend called me. Will you interview my friend? So they're like, okay, fine. That's probably a good idea. Well, the friend tells them the same story. And they're able to verify that he actually called Marion Myers long distance to tell him about the death because he knew that he would want to know right away, which cost money.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this friend was willing to do that. So they're like, all right, we've got no evidence against him, but let's take one more shot at him. Let's just go ahead and take him to the morgue where her body is. They made him look at all of the damage that had been done to her to try to gauge his reaction. And this is what pisses me off, because they expected that to break him into a confession. And it did not. He was in shock and just showed no emotion whatsoever.
Yeah, that would probably be me.
And just like, yep, I see it. I don't know who did it, but it wasn't
that's her.
Me. Yeah, exactly. So at this point in time, they have to let him go. They have nothing. He has not confessed. Their little tactics didn't work to, their 1929
have
bullying.
A suspect with evidence.
Right. So on his way out of the police station, he didn't say a whole lot. He gets into his car, and the only statement that he made to the police was that now he is very scared of Professor Snook.
Okay.
After seeing the damage that he believes he did to Theora.
He knew that Professor Snook was a suspect?
It's all around campus.
Okay. So
yes.
It's not, or the police even told him, maybe they were asking if they were in on it or something, but he's scared now.
Yes. Oh yeah. He's scared.
I just wondered if he had some type of a prior relationship with the professor or knew that she had been, hanging out with the old fella.
I don't think that he knew that.
Okay.
Mm-mm. So they're like, all right, I guess we got to try to change gears. And it's probably time for us to start coming down a little bit harder on old Snook here.
Well, what with all of the evidence in his furnace and his house and
his car.
And
only the murder weapon. That's fine.
That's
but let's keep looking at the guy who just wanted to verify
and
that
potential
his friend
DNA
was dead.
and his alibis that don't have alibis.
But that just goes to show just how unevolved the human brain was at the time of, we can't possibly suspect this man. He's a professor. So what they do, you're not going to love this.
Okay.
Because now that they switch tactics and they're going to go heavy on Professor Snook, they refuse him rest and sleep.
Oh, yeah, we can't do that.
No. And
it goes in the force and coercion part for suppression.
Right. But they did this, and then for hours, they would just slowly reveal more and more evidence that they had against him.
I don't mind that, but you have to be humane with the time frames of the interviews or the interrogations.
Yep. They first told him what they thought would be the truth. They had said that he had killed Miss Hix and then transported her body to the shooting range. Then they said, we have a blood-like stain on your car, and we think that that's from you closing the door on her hand, because Theora did have a what appeared to be an injury on her hand, like it had been shut in a door.
Okay.
So then they showed him the charred articles of clothing from his furnace.
Oops.
The cleaned jacket that looked to have had blood stains on it with the ticket of the day before. And then as they brought each piece of evidence out, it really didn't seem to faze Professor Snook in any way. He just kind of sat there uninterested in what they had to say. And so now the news of Professor Snook being investigated in this murder, it's national news at this point in time, okay? It's front page news all over Ohio, certainly, but along with that press came multiple photos of Professor Snook and of Theora Hix, okay?
Photos?
Mm-hmm. Being published all over the newspaper. So then, once their photos are published, now we have some more witnesses coming forward.
Oh, I've seen them together.
Exactly.
Okay.
Saying, oh, I know. Oh my gosh, I know these people. One man came forward that broke the case wide open, Megan. And it was none other than a bellman for the local YMCA. He told the police that he had something of great interest for them to know. He told detectives that Miss Hix rented an apartment from the YMCA and often came home with Professor Snook at her side. He would often go and stay the night with her, so much so that until the newspaper articles, he thought the two were husband and wife.
Oh my.
Yes, the bellman.
They have all the good gossip.
Bingo bongo, man. They know your life.
And like she's actually paying for that. I mean, she may be renting it, but come on.
You're so brilliant.
He's given her a place to stay so they can shack
I just can't
up.
surprise you with anything.
You can't, but doesn't it seem like her roommates would have been like, she doesn't stay here often?
They just said, well, I don't know that she necessarily.
They rented that room by the hour?
Well, no, they rented the whole apartment. But maybe she did. Maybe she didn't stay the night all the time.
True. And he probably didn't either because he's got a wife and kids at home.
So
they rent the thing for all the time, but they're just going to shack up here and there.
They went down to the detectives go down to the local YMCA. They took the keys. Remember, Miss Hix had a set of keys on her.
Yes.
So they took them off from her and they wanted to see if it fit the lock. When they arrived at the door where she was reported by this bellman to live, those keys didn't work.
No shit.
Mm-mm. So they contact the manager of the YMCA and see, is this true? Like,
Why don't they sit?
Is what the bellman said true? And the manager says, yeah, Miss Hix did indeed live at the YMCA, and that it was Professor Snook who paid for the apartment every month.
I knew it.
Yeah. The morning the body was found, before the news hit that Miss Hix had died, the professor came into the YMCA, gave her keys to the apartment, gave Miss Hix keys to the apartment manager, and told her that he was no longer going to rent it, and that was that. He gave them 2 sets of keys that were returned to the manager.
His and hers.
Exactly. And left. So now let's go back to this holding cell.
Okay.
Let's go back to the detectives releasing little bits of information that they had against him to Professor Snook and how he's totally unfazed. Well, when they get to the part about the apartment and what they know of that,
he's like, oh, fuck, I am screwed.
100%. He lowers his head in shame. He gets quiet. Then at this point in time, he's asked, did you have a relationship with Miss Hix? And he didn't say that he did, but he just agreed with a nod of his head. Then he was asked about the keys. And the manager of the YMCA told the detectives that he was given 2 keys to the room and that he had been returned 2 keys. They asked how he had both sets of keys if the other was supposed to be with Miss Hix. And this is when Professor Snook finally speaks up and says, you know how. So then he was asked to clarify, and the police officers said, or the detective said, you took it from her body? And he said, yes.
Okay.
So now we have an admission of guilt, whereabouts.
But we don't have why.
Oh, and it's...
And I have so many guesses. Can I ask?
Sure.
Okay. Was she pregnant?
No.
Okay.
Not that has come out, no.
I wondered if she was like wanting to make the relationship public or starting to threaten him with it, or if he thought he was going to be found out and just finally wanted to get rid of the problem. Okay.
This is where I want y'all to strap in, because this is the part of the roller coaster where we go down and your heart drops into your asshole and you're not sure if you're going to live. You know, on a roller coaster.
Oh, I'm aware. I do not like them.
Me
and
too.
They do
Hate
not
them.
like
and
me.
that's why, because I don't like my organs dropping into my butt.
I'm more worried about the ones that are coming up. Mine come out. I feel them in my chest first. And yeah, yours are going. Charnell always is straight for the ass.
I'm going to shit myself.
Right.
We know
no,
that.
mine's coming up.
Coming up. Oh, yes.
I'm like, my nipples are tingling, Charnell. What's going to happen now? I'm holding myself.
My spidey nipples are tingling.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. All right. So they're like, they brought in a stenographer to record the confession.
A woman.
Of course. Of course. Exactly. And of course they ask, they start off like, what's your name? James Howard Snook. What's your age? 49. Where do you live? All of that stuff, right?
The doghouse.
And this is what he said. I met Theora Hix about 3 years ago. The friendship continued in a very intimate way ever since. In other words, I hooked up with Theora Hix. Let's say it in today's terms.
We banging.
We started banging
I got
3
the
years
wop.
ago. Mm-hmm. She was a good companion. She'll do things my wife wouldn't.
She's young.
Uh-huh.
Everything stands up where it's supposed to be.
Correct. I have been living with my wife during this 3-year period. I'm a piece of shit who's been cheating on my wife for 3 years.
The translation here is so awesome.
Mm-hmm. I regarded my wife very highly and I respected her very much as a wife. She cleaned my house. She had my children.
She took care of the kids.
Yes. And I gave her the respect of my paycheck, and that's about it. But, this is still a quote from him, but she lacked some of the companionship afforded by Mrs. Hix. In other words, she wouldn't let me do anal. Miss Hix would.
I was just going to say she had a pretty mouth, but
that too.
You went right for the ass again.
Yeah, that's me. I
I
can't
see, and I went north.
Up.
You go south.
That's right. So, but literally this is his quote.
Oh God.
I have been living with my wife during this 3-year period and regarded my wife very highly and respected her very much as a wife. But she lacked some of the companionship afforded by Miss Hix. during the 3 years that I knew Miss Hix. If that does not say she's younger, she's hotter, and she'll do things my wife wouldn't, nothing does. Like, this is the most professional way to say that. Truly.
And here's the thing, without sounding like an asshole, all of the things that he's said are like almost normal things that start to occur, or people have affair. Why kill her? Why are we killing her?
We're still on
break up.
We're still on the roller coaster.
Oh my God. Are we starting to reach the climax
Not
at the
yet,
hill?
not
Okay.
yet. You'll know when we get there.
Okay. Well, we're about up to my belly button.
You don't always know. But
Okay. No, caught me by surprise.
we're getting there. He said, I did assist her in many ways toward her education, but I found out it wasn't appreciated as much as I thought it should be. So in other words, in today's translation, I fucking gave that bitch an education and pulled strings for her, and then she started to deny me the poussey.
Yeah. All the reasons
She
that I
stopped
started
doing the things.
Correct.
Yeah. Then he goes on to say, our association was not a love affair in any sense of the word.
Which makes you better. I didn't love her at all. It was just about dicking her down.
Yes. Yes. But in time, Miss Hix developed a more determined attitude in regard to dictating my movements, and the final accumulation of this occurred on the 13th of June of this year when I met Miss Hix at the corner of 12th and High Street in the city of Columbus, when we both got into my Ford Coupe and proceeded to drive to Lav Ave. That's fun to say.
Lav Ave.
Then went out of the Fisher Road and to the Columbus Rifle Range of the New York Central Railroad Company, during when she in other words, so she remonstrated with me against leaving the city with my family for the weekend as I had planned to do so. So in other words,
she's yelling at him.
Yes.
You're not going.
He was going to go leave with his family for the weekend. She didn't like it. And according to, here's where we climax.
Okay.
According to
Thanks
Professor
for warning me.
Snooks, she threatened that if I did not go, she would take the life of my wife and baby.
Wow.
And now
she said she was going to kill his wife and baby. This was self-defense of others?
There you go, Megan. We've reached it. That's his defense. I killed her because she was going to kill my wife and kids if I went out of town. Out of these 3 years, she's been okay with me being with my wife and kids, because this is, after all,
this is a
not
disappointing
about love.
Climax.
It
really is. Not from you, but from him. Like, you couldn't come up with something better.
I'm assuming that
who's going to believe
James Snook only ever gave disappointing climaxes. Okay. Theora wasn't in it for the climax. She was in it for the education benefits that she was getting, and just went along with it.
And if she stopped doing that stuff, he was stopping doing the other stuff.
Right.
Financing her.
Right.
And she needed his assistance.
Mm-hmm.
What are the possibilities that she actually had developed some type of love? Like, she's having an affair with an older professor. I almost feel like she could have been in love with him, and the whole thing was never love for him. He was just using her for the WAP.
We'll kind of get to this.
To Cardi B that shit.
Yeah, we're going to get to it a little bit more.
Okay.
He said during this quarrel, so they're fighting, right, about this. During this quarrel, she grabbed for the purse in which she sometimes carried a .41 caliber Derringer.
Yeah, Derringer's type of gun. Cool gun.
That he had given her. He had given her this .41 caliber Derringer.
A normal and very valuable gift from a gun person. Like,
yes.
He's a sharpshooter, right?
He is,
or marksman, I should say.
Yeah, he's a gold medalist in
it.
So in the struggle, she was hit on the head with a hammer with the intent to stun her.
Oh. That's why you hit people in the head with a hammer.
Just to stun.
I just want to... Bullshit. I've never seen anybody hit someone with a hammer unless they were intending to kill them.
She might be
or
going
GBH, great bodily harm.
Right. She might be going for her gun. Let me just take this hammer that I randomly have in my vehicle.
In my hand, within arm shot.
And stun her? Okay. She continued desperately. This is still a quote from him. This is all his confession that was being stenographed.
Stenographed?
that too.
I actually made that up too. I don't know if that's right. Recorded.
Either one of us, yes.
Documented.
Exactly, documented. Almost
you almost lost a tooth.
Almost knocked my tooth out.
It did.
She continued desperately, and an increased number of blows of increased force was necessary to stop her. Realizing then that her skull was fractured, and to relieve her suffering, I severed her jugular vein with my pocket knife.
You fuck. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Do you hear this? She kept going for her gun.
No, she didn't.
And I realized that I had caused her a skull fracture. So to put her out of her misery, I was humane and severed her jugular.
But he's saying he's repeatedly hitting her to stop her from going for this gun. There's no way if she even was going for a gun, which is a lie, by the way, she would have stopped, if not after the first blow, the second. She would have been knocked out.
Thank you. He says, I then proceeded to pick up the things that had been scattered during the struggle.
What, like her brains?
And left.
Right. Pieces of skull?
Fair enough. And left. He said, the instrument when I used to quiet her was a hammer lying in the back of the seat. After leaving the rifle range, I proceeded home, tossing the purse from the quarry bridge into the, how do we say this? Scioto River? Scioto?
I don't know.
I'm not familiar with that river in Ohio. After the struggle was over, I discovered the gun was not even in her purse.
Oh.
Because she wasn't fucking going for her gun.
No, she wasn't going for her gun. No. There's no imminent threat there.
No. But he's like, oh, she keeps this gun in her purse and that's what she was going for. No. What I truly believe is that she thought that they were just out for a joyride and they were going to hook up. And he was like, I am done here, and killed her.
What if she was just reaching for her purse to get out of the car and leave? Like, dude, you've broken my heart. I'm grabbing my purse and leaving.
Well, there's more. Hold on.
Oh, God.
We're still on the roller coaster, people. So
it's the second hill. It's not going to be as big as the first one.
Right, but it's still a hill.
Still going to make things come up or down if you're Charnell.
Yes, your asshole's still going to tingle just a little bit. So the professor went on to set up his defense. He told the officers that he was afraid that Miss Hix would have followed through with her threats and that she would have killed his family. He said, when she started to get out of the car, I grabbed a hammer from the ledge of the back seat and hit her with the flat side of it. She got out and I followed, hitting her again and again. Her last words were, damn you, I'll kill you.
How?
Those were her last words.
But her head's bashed in.
And then he says, I kept hitting her. I struck her once with the round end of the hammer. That was a hard one. She was unconscious then and suffering.
If she's unconscious, how is she suffering?
It gets so much worse. She had my sympathy. I didn't want to hit her anymore. I hated to do it. She was lying on her back and moaning slightly when I took out my pocket knife and cut her jugular vein.
This is how he renders aid.
Her handbag and keys came out of the car in the struggle.
Came out like they walked?
They flew out somehow.
Fling and right they did.
Fling and right.
God.
I gotta say that more. I like that. She would, he said, the wound she had on her abdomen and her back, this is a quote from him, so I can't fix the grammar.
Okay.
But the direct quote is, the wound she had on her abdomen and her back was machine cuts. She got them when she fell against the car. So she did have a wound both on her abdomen and back because he was tossing her around the outside of the vehicle, repeatedly hitting her with this hammer.
Okay.
I mean, she was not fighting back. She was being, ragdolled.
She was she was obtaining injuries.
She was being beaten, exactly.
To death.
Yep.
With a hammer.
He then described returning home in a haze. He sat in the dark thinking of his actions when his wife came down to check on him. She didn't see the blood all over him because it was dark. He changed and went to bed but didn't sleep. Oh, you poor thing. The next day he pretended it didn't happen and didn't know that the body was found until it had hit the news.
But he put her there. at a range that he went to often and knew that people would go to first thing. His choice in hiding spot, he did not win hide and seek gold medals at that Olympics.
You know what we say sometimes is that they truly want to be caught?
Of course they do. Or that you cared enough about the person that you've just murdered that you want them to be found.
Right.
Which is not meant to be a redeeming quality for this asshole, by the way. I'm just speculating on why.
Not at all. The grand jury did decide to charge him with first-degree murder charges. They believe that they had enough for first degree because of the fact that he slit her jugular vein when he said she was already unconscious and suffering. So they're like, no.
Euthanasia is not a defense.
No. The hammer blows were in response to the danger that he thought himself to be in, but the act of killing her when she was subdued made him a murderer in their eyes at that point in time. Okay. So June 24th, not 2029.
1929.
Yep.
Got you, boo.
That's the year, 1929, not in the future, 2029. Professor Snook and his attorneys attended the first hearing before the trial. Professor Snook did admit his guilt and said that he would plead guilty, but he was told he could change his mind. The state expected this. They knew from his confession that he was trying to make it look as if he had killed her to protect his family. He might also explore the avenue of a temporary insanity plea. So it was suggested that when he spoke about the hammer blows, he felt as if he had to protect everyone.
What?
Everyone. So since they expected it, the state had already set up interviews for him with 3 doctors. And they wanted him to be examined physically and mentally.
I hope one of them was a veterinarian.
You beast.
Well, he was a veterinarian, right?
He was.
Or veterinary science.
Right. They spent most of the day with Professor Snook. They took blood samples. They put him through a series of tests. By the end of the day, they said, you know what? He's a totally normal, sane guy. Okay? They just had to wait for the blood test to be examined, which could take weeks. I don't know if they thought they were going to find insanity in the blood. I'm not sure.
Syphilis.
Oh, maybe. It's 1929.
There was syphilis.
It was everywhere.
Yeah. And it did used to make people go batshit.
Absolutely. So. I think it still can, untreated.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Most of the people by that time realized something isn't looking quite so right down there and they head on to the clinic.
Right.
Or ask discreetly for, can somebody please call me a penicillin?
Yeah. Just something. Just a little
Just
one.
a little something. Yeah. I want to do a couple shots of that.
So the defense went ahead, though, and hired their own medical team to examine him as well.
As they will and have a right to.
Yes. I knew you were going to say that. Also, they asked for a change of venue, which I think was smart.
Yeah, but I don't know that I'd granted it as the judge.
They did. They went ahead and did it, but it did push things back.
Because that judge is like, no
more.
Thanks, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
You really, okay, in all fairness, you can't change venue on every case. But for being 1929 and small town and everybody knowing everything, it probably is fair to say that he wouldn't have received a fair trial there.
I'm so sorry because
did I just say all of that for nothing?
Well, no, you taught people something. But in this particular case, the change of venue, the judge believed was done purposely to try to delay the trial, and he didn't want that being delayed anymore. So he denied the change of venue, but he did allow the other doctors and for their blood sample to be taken. So that would take a few weeks. But he didn't want it delayed even more by doing the change of venue.
And thank you, which is why I originally said I wouldn't. I love that he did that because that still happens today. Mm-hmm. Defense attorneys on a case will take any tactic possible. And this is not a dig on them. They're doing their jobs.
Right, of course.
And you want to delay things a little bit longer. So you ask for the change of venue, knowing you're not going to get it. But the judge did right by delaying it for purposes of the defense experts, because you cannot deny that.
Right,
that would have been grounds, I believe, for if not a mistrial, at least some type of an appeal for sure.
Definitely, if they weren't allowed to do that.
To present their own expert witnesses?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course. And so the judge, who wanted no more delays, called both sides to his chambers to discuss what was going to happen, because he figured out that Professor Snook might possibly change his plea to not guilty for reasons of insanity. Okay. Because at this point in time, he has pled guilty for self-defense. Okay. So he calls everybody into his chambers and he's like, I do not want any more delays in this. And we can work over the weekend if possible, but we're not going to delay this any further. And so both sides agreed. Okay, we will work the weekends if we have to. We will get this expedited and have the doctors, those 3 doctors for the defense, come in over the weekend, work with Professor Snook and get things going. And they did, but it didn't work out so well for them because by Monday morning, even the defense's doctors found Professor Snook sane.
Okay.
So he cannot plead not guilty by reason of insanity.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So now he is changing his plea to not guilty, acting in self-defense. Okay.
Which was what he was trying to do to begin with.
And they did still have this, they had this underlying state of that he had emotional insanity. He was overcome with his emotions, which led to Miss Hicks' death. All right.
Which means you can be criminally culpable. So now that plea is called guilty but mentally ill.
Oh, okay.
So there's not guilty by reason of insanity and guilty but mentally ill.
Got ya. Yeah, I wondered about that.
It doesn't happen very often.
I bet not. I did wonder what that was all about, if that was even a thing anymore in today's age. And,
I don't see.
There's a way for it, but it's not often.
Yeah, and it just changes the sentence
Okay.
in terms of treatment and where you might get sent. But those are the ones where often you'll be sent to a mental health facility, but then turned over to the Department of Corrections.
Okay,
you're not like
sense.
released afterwards.
That makes sense.
Whereas when you're too insane to stand trial, you go to the mental hospital and they can either restore you to competency so that you can stand trial, or they write us a nice note that says, this guy's so crazy, he ain't ever getting better.
I got ya.
And then they can often be let out, but they're usually in some type of facility or treatment
assisted living
forever.
Yes,
those type of things. It's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of you out there have horror stories otherwise.
For sure. So the trial began on August 3rd, 1929, and the state called the state doctor who performed the autopsy on Miss Hicks. He stated that he believed that this was premeditated murder, something that, of course, the defense jumps on right away of, I'm sorry, how is the doctor that did the autopsy determining this is premeditated murder? But they're like, tell us how you can prove that from doing an autopsy. And the doctor pointed out that the professor had cut her throat to end her suffering of the damage that he had already caused her. He had a knife on him. He had a hammer on him. Those were the 2 instruments that were absolutely used. So
I like it. It's a good argument.
Yeah.
It's just usually the prosecution's making that argument, not the person testifying. But hey, I dig it.
I think this was premeditated. Absolutely.
Premeditation does not have to require a long period of planning in advance. Mm-mm. So he was going with premeditation occurred within minutes because there was this assault that occurred.
Yep.
And the premeditation happened there.
Yes.
With the GBH. When you decided to hit her the second time or the third time with the hammer.
When he decided to cut her throat.
And then cut her throat.
When he clearly had stated that she was unconscious at that point and suffering.
She was no longer a threat to him.
No longer a threat. Exactly.
He had effectively defended himself.
With his autopsy, could corroborate, that she absolutely would have been defenseless, no threat at that point in time, based on the injuries on her head.
She was laying there making noises.
Yeah, right.
And again, he put her out of her misery. That's,
So I agree. Definite premeditation there. They also called the owner of the dry cleaners, where he took his suit and talked about how, yep, it definitely looked like it had blood on it. Yep, we tried to get it out and couldn't because it's a blood stain.
Yeah. They basically just turned brown or pinkish. Remember, I worked at a dry cleaner.
There were even some witnesses that came forward, including one that had been that had actually seen Miss Hicks with someone in the parking lot of the rifle range. They appeared to have been fighting at the time in the parking lot of the rifle range. He said that he didn't stop because he had his daughters with him and did not want to get his young daughters exposed to that. He didn't think about it again until the news of Miss Hicks' death was published, and he waited to report what he had seen because he didn't want to get involved. We see that a lot.
I hate that, but yes, I know.
Now, this was an important testimony because, according to the confession of Mr. Snook's there, Miss Hix didn't get out of the car for long without being hit over and over with the hammer. Because remember, he stated that she was going for her purse, and he thought that she was a danger, and so he grabbed that hammer to stun her. And according to this witness,
no,
they were outside of that car arguing. She hadn't been hit yet.
No.
So there's definitely more about the story and his confession than what he was willing to tell the police. So then there were this was weird, guys. This is just weird. 1929, man. The prosecution also came forward they said that they actually thought that it was possible that Professor Snook had actually drugged Theora, and then killed her. So this theory was formed because the autopsy doctor found beef in her stomach that had not digested at all. She'd had no time to digest it. So it's possible that the beef had been poisoned. They thought it was maybe laced with drugs. And so the doctor...
Had they just gone to dinner?
This is a weird test. We don't know. We don't know that.
Okay.
Possibly because it was dinner time.
Are you going to say something gross?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you something gross, and it has to do with animals. It's not as bad as the rabbit test from the David Brown case,
Thank you.
but it's gross.
Okay.
So, and no one dies, but it's still gross. So the doctor, to test this theory that this piece of beef was laced with drugs, the doctor gave the undigested beef to a dog.
Okay.
The dog acted weird and wobbly after eating it, as if he was drugged with some kind of sedative. He did survive. The dog didn't die. But guys, I'm thinking I would act really weird, like I was drugged, if I had been given an undigested piece of meat from a dead person's stomach.
But a dog wouldn't.
You don't think so? Maybe not.
Dogs eat the ass out of deer in my yard, man.
They can.
I don't like that they tested it on dogs, but it's 1929 too.
Right. They're definitely doing worse to dogs
here's
right
the
now.
thing. Is that interesting? Yes. Would that be scientifically acceptable today? No. It wouldn't pass a Daubert test if you're a Daubert state. No evidentiary.
No. But in the doctor's mind, that means the meat was drugged.
Okay.
But I do see what you're saying. They do eat. I mean, dogs do eat meat from dead carcasses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even if it wasn't drugged, it just could have been bad meat.
Right. Exactly.
You can get all kinds of weird foodborne. Well, I mean, you've had food poisoning before.
Sure have.
At Michael's.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I remember those panties wherever they got. Rest in peace.
That I left in the Michael's. Yep. That's what I'm going to be famous for someday. Michael's is going to sponsor us someday simply because I shit myself in their store and have told the world about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have lovely bathrooms.
They sure do. It was very clean.
At first.
All right.
Yeah, the dog beef test isn't my favorite thing about this case.
No,
but whatever.
I did find that a little bit weird. But these are just some of their theories, okay? Now, the defense did challenge this because, I'm sorry. They didn't challenge the dog thing.
Oh.
What they challenged was that the prosecution also brought in the newspaper writer who had been present. He took down the confession. And the defense did point out that confession was under duress.
It was.
Because they openly said that they
deprived him of food and sleep.
Yes, of nourishment and sleep. But the judge did decide to allow it, just to allow the confession and allow the testimony from the writer who stenographed the confession.
I want to call it stenographed.
Yeah, that too. Whatever it is.
I don't know if either one of the words we're saying are real.
Oh, no.
I just, in my head.
These are crime curious words.
We make up our own.
We live in our own. This is its own world. You know that, right? Like, do you all know as listeners, you're in the crime curious world where it is weird. There are penises and off-color jokes and it's just, and made up words and mispronounced towns. And don't at me about it because I don't live everywhere.
She doesn't, and I just don't care. That's the difference between her and me.
Right. Like, come on. So anyway, The reason that the judge allowed it is because he wanted the jury to have a full scope of the confession, just because it was such a big part of the defense that they were going for, that it was self-defense.
When you make a decision to suppress evidence, one of the things that you're supposed to look at is whether the danger of the probative value of the information outweighs the prejudice.
Okay.
And in this case, it sounds like that's exactly what he did, was found that it was more probative than prejudicial.
Yep.
Or if it was that prejudicial, it was still of such probative value for the jury to hear that it needed to come in.
Yep. And it did. Now, I found this adorable. The defense wanted character witnesses.
Sure.
Okay. Who is going to speak about Professor Snope's character?
I see it all the time.
The two people that they had. Well, wouldn't you know it? It's Professor Snope's own mother.
No, don't use your mom.
And
your wife.
His mother-in-law.
Wow.
Which the mother-in-law, it's 1929, and so it's not unusual for men to skirt around on their husbands, or on their wives, excuse me.
Yeah, I suppose.
And so the mother-in-law is probably just like, her husband probably skirted around on her.
He was a good husband and father. Right. He provided for my daughter.
Money, right? A nice home, nice clothes, jewelry, all of the material things. So he's a good husband.
And he was killing that nasty harlot to protect her daughter and grandchild.
That's right. So, of course, I will testify it to what a fantastic man he is.
I feel like they could have chosen better.
I don't know why the mother-in-law had a Wisconsin type drawl to her, but she did. Don't you know?
It's Ohio.
So then they go ahead and they call Professor Snoop as well. I keep wanting to call him Professor Snape. If you're a Harry Potter fan, anybody else out there?
Well, you also said Snoop, and it's Snoke.
It's Snook.
That's
Snook.
What's
worse.
Snoop, Snook. Oh my God!
It's none of the things.
It is none of the things
Snook.
we just said. What was that?
My phone fell off my lap.
You scared the hell out of me.
I startle you a lot on this podcast.
I know. I told you before. Eventually I will wet my pants. It's gonna happen. You're attached to a cord. Okay.
Sorry, everybody.
I just got to see some Crime Curious gymnastics.
All professionalism is out the window. I needed my water terribly. The coffee made my throat dry. So, Professor James Snook, not Snope. And if I've been saying Snope this whole time too, sorry, guys.
You started with Snook. I just think we might have changed to Snope at some point in time in here.
Yeah, we might have. It's Snook. It is. We don't care. He's a fucking bad man.
We don't care what his name was.
All right. So he testifies about how he met Ms. Hix. His wife, by the way, is in the courtroom hearing all this. He's talking about how they met. He tells the jury they fell for one another. However, he was upfront with the police about how it was nothing but carnal pleasure.
It was not love for him.
We were banging.
Right.
That's it.
Jurors don't like that, though.
Exactly. So in a juror's, to the jury, he was saying they fell for one. They just couldn't help it. Emotions, they ran high and sparks flew.
Think about your jury, too. I bet you've got 12 men.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I did not see that.
I'm speculating.
I know at one point in time they did have a woman, but it had to delay the trial a little bit longer because she got super ill.
Okay.
So they did have at least one woman.
Did they test the meat on her? No, don't spit your water out.
Good God. I have got it. Hold on.
Okay. She almost spit all over the computer. Spitters or quitters, Charnell.
I am no quitter, Megan. So he did testify, though, that they had an understanding about their relationship. Their relationship was for their mutual companionship only and nothing more. Nothing else would ever come of it. And then he went on to tell about the night that she, quote unquote, died. I'm sorry, sir. You mean the night that you brutally murdered her? No, I can't even say it.
The night he put her out of her misery.
He recounts what happened. He talks about how she threatened his family. And he truly believed that she had a gun on her and that she was going to go right over and shoot his baby and his wife. He taught her how to shoot. He knows that she's an excellent marksman.
Now you're from Georgia.
I know. I don't know where I am now, but I don't want to do a snooty professor voice because I like snooty professors and I don't like this guy. So I'm not going to give him the snooty professor voice. I also like Southern people too, so I'm not sure. He's got to have some sort of accent so you guys know I'm talking in his vernacular.
You do what you do, you Dow.
Otherwise, this is just a boring podcast to listen to.
It really is. Just pick whatever accent you want.
Yeah, he was worried because he knows he's an excellent teacher, and my God, he's an Olympic shooter. Mm-hmm. So if she's got her eyes set on his wife, well, she's not going to miss her target because he taught her how to shoot. Follow the reasoning here?
I do. What a tangled web he's weaving.
He stated that he killed her only out of self-defense. That is it, people.
Self-defense or pity?
Self-defense.
Was he putting her out of her misery or what?
No, it was self-defense. She was going to go and take that little gun and kill his wife and baby.
Did he explain how it was self-defense after she was already defenseless on the ground?
Well, he didn't need to state that because the prosecution went ahead and made sure
cross-examination
that was in there.
Remember, I was a former prosecutor. There's nothing better when then they decide to take the stand and testify.
It sure is. I bet it's super fun.
You have a right to remain silent for a reason. But like I've said before, not everybody has the ability.
And I am one of those that struggles with the ability to stay silent. But if I was ever in trouble with the law, that's going to be about the time I find my silence.
I would think so.
I hope so.
Well, he couldn't find a silence to begin with either.
Not at all. No.
I understand being under duress, and when they brought him in there, those things can all lead to possibly some inaccuracies. But, the solution to that is I'm not talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have nothing to say.
I have nothing left
Are you
to
holding
say.
me here or not?
Yep. So,
give me an attorney.
At this point in time, the case is handed over to the jury. It took them 30 minutes, Megan.
Hey, that's pretty fast for a 1920s jury murder trial.
They found Dr. James Snook guilty of murder in the first degree, and they fixed death as his sentence. So they did not believe his cockamamie. I do love that word.
Cockamamie.
His cockamamie story about, I thought she had the gun in her purse and yada, yada, yada. No. They absolutely had a problem with the fact that he hit her repeatedly with the hammer, and in his confession admitted she was unconscious, and then he let her bleed out to murder her. Yes. So in the months leading up to the execution, his attorneys really did try to appeal, but each appeal was struck down. And he was scheduled for execution February 28th, 1930. The governor declined to step in and stop it. All right. And at this point in time, Dr. Snook confessed to everything. When he realizes that he is faced with death, now it's between him and the good Lord, and he's decided to come completely clean.
Is this right before his execution?
Yes.
Final confession.
Yep.
He might have been a religious man.
To the prison warden, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So this is his full confession to the prison warden of what had really happened. He said that Miss Theora Hix was going to expose him. She would tell the world about their affair and that he would be ruined. It would end his marriage. It would end his teaching career. So he planned very carefully to kill her. This was the only way that he could ensure that they weren't exposed. The agreement had been that they weren't going to have feelings for each other, that it was carnal pleasure only. And then she started to withhold the carnal pleasure because she wanted more.
Yeah.
She wanted a relationship with him. And he got angry that she withheld the carnal pleasures from him. If you look this case up, there's not a ton of coverage on this. Not a lot of great articles on this. But one was a little off color, and I'm just not sure about this. Or excuse me, what these articles were saying was that Theora was like really into BDSM and was really well known as being like kinky and promiscuous.
Which is why he liked her.
Yeah, and all of this stuff.
As the things the wife wasn't doing.
But I found this after the fact. Like I found that article very much after the fact, and I didn't use it as part of my resources, but I just wanted to include that there was possibly those rumors.
Listen.
But what it boils down to is she wanted more.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And then she was like, well, then I'm going to tell everybody about us. It's been 3 years of this. And that's when he planned her death. and carried it out. So he does tell the prison warden.
Yeah, that's his confession. But don't you still think that in 1929, not only would he have probably not ended up divorced, but he probably wouldn't have lost his job either?
Probably not. No.
He would have had a long argument with his wife, who wouldn't have wanted to end the marriage for their baby and for her security. Exactly. She would have told him not to do it again.
Yep. I agree. I agree so completely with you.
Yeah.
Yes. And Theora...
Needless murder is all I'm saying.
It is. Oh, absolutely. And this is what I found interesting. He told the warden that he honestly believed that the police would not track, like, that he wouldn't be caught. He honestly believed that, and he was shocked that they found him so quickly. Like, was he not thinking about how other people had seen them going into an apartment together?
I think that he was oblivious to the fact that other people were seeing them, period.
Mm-hmm.
And then
and noting and taking any note of them.
Right, that they had been seen together. And then who would suspect this bellhop? The doorman.
Right.
Right?
Right. Well,
and he would never have come forward to begin with.
And truly someone like Professor Snook, even leave it to someone of this mentality to not give a human like the bellman a second thought.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that is what it was so eye-opening for me, of just how little he really thought of other people and their capabilities.
Of
like,
recognizing something off.
And he clearly had no faith in the police's ability to track evidence. In fact,
I can't believe you found me so fast.
I will say the name on the apartment was his two middle names that he used as a first and last name.
Okay.
So he didn't use James Snook. He had two middle names. Can't remember what both. One of them was Dean. That was what he claimed was his last name. So he didn't actually put the apartment fully in his name, just in his two middle names.
All right. Mm-hmm. He was using a fake name.
Yes.
Like checking in under Bugs Bunny if you're a rock star.
Yes. Yep. So March 1st, 1930, Dr. Snook stepped into the death chamber without any assistance. He took a seat in the electric chair. The preacher prayed for him, and then he was put to death.
All right.
Yep, for the murder. He was buried in his family's plot. They did not use his last name on the tombstone. Instead, they used the middle name and his last name so that no one would damage the stone.
Well, they should have used his two middle names,
two
like
middle
at the
names.
hotel room.
Yeah, no
just
kidding.
as a final.
Yep.
I'm flipping off. Charnell,
yes, that was a flip off.
I wanted you to hear that.
Can you do that again? Yeah, that was beautiful.
That's what it sounds like when you flip somebody off on radio.
Wow. Now we know.
I know. We should record that as a soundbite.
I think we should. I'm going to cut it out and just use it as a snippet. Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, so there's the story of Theora Hix and her tragic, like you said, senseless murder.
What
you could have
scandal?
broke up. Such scandal. 1929 scandal, guys.
At the Ohio State University.
Which I took pleasure in reporting
Me too,
on.
a little bit. Should we find crimes at other Big Ten schools too? Probably. Will we? Probably not.
Well, there at least the other 8 of them, maybe.
Right.
I think there's actually more in the Big
Well,
Ten.
I mean, we had our other old timey case from Chicago with the two guys, and that dude went to U of M.
Yep. Yeah, we've been fair.
We've been fair.
We have.
Yeah, we made fun of Big Brother first, and then Ohio, and probably MSU will be next.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Lord knows there's been plenty of crime.
Dude, we
there.
had so much tragedy with MSU in the last year that the only thing we said about them was prayers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like legit. Sometimes
Amen.
it's all about your timing.
So true. Are you ready for a brain bath?
Yes, yeah, I am.
Did you like this case?
I did.
Was like, oh.
I like old timey cases.
Yeah.
So, and this it wasn't even like super old timey, but it was good.
It was twisty. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take you to Canada.
Eh?
Yes.
They're having some problems with fires right now.
They are. And, our thoughts with everybody that is dealing with that. Absolutely.
Do you ever watch Ozark?
No.
You seen it? I love Jason Bateman, and he's an actor in Ozark. And
I do know of it. Just if
okay, so one of the things that he's famous for saying in one of the seasons is "the fuck you are." Okay, so there's this meme where it's him with "the fuck you are."
I've seen that.
And then at the top of it, sorry Canada. Lately, the meme has said like, "We're gonna get these fires put out right away, Canada." And Jason Bateman goes, "The fuck you are."
Yeah,
like
exactly.
there, yeah.
It's so out of control right now.
It is.
I saw a picture.
Prayers to any of our listeners, by the way,
Yes.
who've been up there. And even in down the eastern seaboard, all the way down to NYC. Like,
have you seen those photos of the
it's
air?
ridiculous.
I know.
Yellow out there with masks. It looks post-apocalyptic.
It does. It does. It is very scary. So sorry for anybody that has to deal with
So we're
that.
super sorry. Go ahead and pick on Canada.
Well, this one's just about cupcakes. This is the world's...
About what?
Cupcakes. I'm going to tell you about the world's, most thoughtful thief. Really. It says...
Of course, the most thoughtful thief in the world is from Canada.
Interesting that you say that, because the first quote of the article is, Canadians are known worldwide for sometimes being too nice.
Sweetest people.
This is how one media outlet is framing a cupcake caper out of British Columbia, in which both the perp and the bakery owner that he inconvenienced are making headlines for their classic Canadian courtesy. The CBC reports on the incident, which took place last Friday. This was sometime recently, but I'm sorry, I forgot to make note of the actual date, at Sweet Something in Vancouver, and was captured on security cameras. In the footage, that owner, Emma Irving, posted on TikTok, a man can be seen kicking through the bakery's glass front door just after 3 a.m., then stepping inside. Irving says in the video that he took a rest in a chair for about 10 or 15 minutes before deciding to head to the bathroom. When he emerges again on camera, the man has a mop and a mop bucket in hand, and he starts cleaning up the mess of the shattered glass that he created when he broke into the bakery.
Drugs.
She says, honestly, gotta love a criminal who is at least respectful.
OCD.
After posing for some selfies for the bakery's cell phone, showing off his large orange sunglasses, the guy finally decided to take his leave more than an hour later, and he also took 6 chocolate champagne cupcakes. Quote, this is a quote from Irvine. That is the last name of the lady who owns the place. Yeah. She said, quote, I hope they're good, bro. Next time, just ask. We will be happy to give you the 6 cupcakes, she said in her video. Then, according to the Washington Post, on Monday, Irving was walking her dog and trying to wrap her head around the break-in, and a colleague called her with a message. The cupcake thief had called the bakery, and when Irving returned the call, he apologized for his actions, and he offered to pay $850 in damages, and also threw in his orange sunglasses as a gift.
What the hell,
The
man?
orange sunglasses he was taking the selfie in.
That is fantastic.
There is crime in Canada.
I broke the law. I'm so sorry.
I'm going to pay for the damages.
Before he even got caught.
Yeah. Wasn't even caught. I'll pay for the damages, and I will throw in my orange sunglasses.
Don't you feel like maybe he was having an off night? Like he got super drunk or high and did all of this and then was like, oh,
in the morning.
God.
Yeah. He was on a journey. Didn't remember what he did the night before. Then saw on TikTok, in fact, what he did do the night before. Plus, in his cell phone, those selfies.
When you look through your phone the next morning you go,
like,
oh no,
that's the bakery down the street.
Yeah, I have had.
And you've got chocolate champagne cupcake wrappers on your chest and all around you.
Yeah, I'm.
Oh yeah, but if only all crimes could be that sweet, we really wouldn't have a show to put on for people.
No, we would not.
But still, unless we wanted to be the sweetest crime podcast there is. And I don't think we could shake dicks in that one.
Sure. I mean, cupcake ones. With sugar, spice, and everything nice.
You know there's cupcake penises somewhere. Someone's probably posted it in our group before.
Olivia is a pastry chef. She could
true.
make you pretty much anything you want. That's what modeling chocolate's for.
Yeah, good point. Well, thank you all for listening. If you want more of us, like several episodes a week, you should join Patreon, because they get often 2 episodes a week, sometimes 3. It just depends on what level that they're at. If you're at the $10 a month level, you get 5 bonus episodes, guys.
That counts our Brain Bath Only episode.
Mm-hmm. Including the Brain Bath Only episodes. When I have time, I jump on and do a chat with Chuck.
You do.
You miss the chat with Chucks if you're not a Patreon.
True story.
And that's really, sometimes I get to play with you, and sometimes I'm just playing with myself.
Well, you're not alone.
I know.
You're not
I
alone
never
in
am.
that. I don't know how many people have said, I love playing with Megan, but sometimes I just have to play by myself.
Yeah. That's good too. It's good too.
I'm glad I'm there for your entertainment.
So anyway, yeah, but you guys should consider that because, it keeps us on air. Our Patreons truly are who keep us on air. So that is why we give them the extra content. And also the Patreon only Facebook group. I mean, you're missing
I sometimes ask myself how this happened.
It's erect with fun in there. That's all I'll say. But thank you
Guaranteed
all
to fill you up with joy.
Yes, with something. Joy.
Oh, good
giggles,
Lord.
Disgust. Sometimes I look at those posts and go, how did our Patreon find that? What did they search? Did this just pop up as their ad?
I prefer not to ask questions about what our Patreons have in their search engine and other than they're using the incognito tabs. And if you aren't, you should. Because I'm scared for all of you.
Absolutely.
So, but until then, general public, keep it curious.
Yes, keep listening.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.